Welcome back to part 5 of the Enterprise D project. Hopefully we're going to start moving along at a quicker pace now. All this malarkey is behind us. It was a lot of work, but we're there eventually. So we can start actually putting some lights into this thing. So let's put this one aside for a sec and talk about this. So you'll see that there's already like a large lump of resin in here. It's translucent resin, urethane, same stuff that the other lighting parts are made of, like the dorsal, same material. This is just a prototype at the minute. I'm not sure whether I'm going to continue sort of down the road with this. We'll see how it pans out because I'm trying to get this thing to serve double duty here. You can see its main function at the minute is to be the anchor point for the support rod that the ship will be mounted to in the end, and it's also a lighting component in of itself. There's some blue LED strip tape under there, covered in foil tape, and the idea being that it diffuses the LEDs really nicely, so we get a nice even glow behind the deflector dish that's going to sit snug as a bug in a rug in that depression there. So let me kind of mackle something together and I'll give you a better look at what my intentions are for this part with the deflector dish, and talk a little bit more in detail about some other bits and bobs. So I'll be back. So as I was saying, this is going to be serving double duty. It's the lighting component for the deflector dish. This translucent resin does a really good job of diffusing LED lights to give us that really nice soft blue energy that we see behind the deflector. And it's also the mount post anchor point. It's only temporarily screwed into place at the minute. That's not how it's going to look in the end. Don't worry about those screws. That's purely so I can remove this and then refit it accurately and back into position, as I'm probably going to need to do that a few times during the project. So I'm still making up my mind how I'll fix this eventually, like finally fix it into place. If I end up going this route, again, I still haven't really made up my mind whether I like this or not. I'll see how it goes. So the idea is that you get your kit part and you don't need to diffuse this anymore. Usually what you'd have to do is kind of either sand the back of this or spray it with some frost material or make some other kind of diffused light box kind of solution, and you kind of run out of room back there because the center of gravity is right there. There's not a lot of room to get LEDs and all the diffusion you need and all the rest of it. So I tried to kill two birds with one stone with this and get a mounting reinforced anchor point that is actually diffusing the light at the same time, and it does work. It works fine. I'm not confident in its strength as a mount reinforcement, so time will tell with that. But anyway, yeah, so this deflector dish literally just drops into position behind the lip of the mouth there, and it sits in there quite nicely. Obviously when I come to fix that in position properly later on in the build, I'll make sure it's in exactly the right place, but it does a good job of holding it where it needs to be. So if I just flick a switch here on the power supply, and you'll see now, cameras, you have to bear with it. I mean, a lot of you may know this, but cameras really love to overexpose lighting, so you can make out some hot spots there that you just can't see to the naked eye. So if I bring this in a bit closer, yeah, I mean, it kind of looks more like that to the naked eye. It's a really nicely even blue wash of light, and then when you have the part that goes in front of that, you're just not even going to see the hot spots at all. Like I said, this translucent resin does a really good job of diffusing light, so I love this stuff. I'm really happy with it. Right, so next up is, before we get too much further, we need to decide how I'm going to attack the upgrade part that I'm going to put in there. Again, this is the dorsal part that I've developed myself. It's part of a whole kit of upgrades that are available. So if you go to the Facebook page, you can go and see about getting yourself a set if you want them. But yeah, so there's a few issues with this part, namely this being the impulse engine. So let me get sorted out and I'll come back and explain exactly what we need to bang our heads against next. So give me a sec. Right, let's talk about this dorsal part then. There's quite a lot to try and explain here, so forgive me if I start waffling. I'll try and get through it as clearly as I can. But the biggest problem that I'm facing is getting this impulse engine lit red without that red light spreading up and getting into these windows, and then conversely any of the white lighting behind here to light the windows spreading down through the resin and turning this from red into like a pinky lavender. To illustrate this a little bit better, I've got an old scrap part with some primer thrown over it, and I've really roughly scraped the windows out just to illustrate it a little bit better. So let's say, for example, I've just drilled some holes in the back of there. I've bung a 3mm LED in the back of it. I've got a big red hot spot for one, so that's no good. And the bigger problem is all these windows are red. Obviously that is not what I want. I need them to be white, so I'll put some white LEDs behind there to try and get the windows white again, which is fine. But if I'm trying to light these bottom ones up as they are in generations, you start to see what's happening. Hopefully this camera's not washing out too much. The impulse engine is starting to get washed out with white light, and it's turning it into like a pinky kind of lavendery sort of colour. So there's not a lot I can do really to stop that happening, and it's a function of this translucent resin being really effective at spreading light. It works really well when you've only got one colour of light to deal with, but where you've got multiple colours of light in a solid piece of resin, then it can be a bit of a problem. So how am I going to tackle it? Well, there's a really simple way of going about it, which I won't be doing, but basically you forget about your red LEDs altogether and you just throw loads of white lights behind there to get your windows all lit up, and that will give you a bright white impulse engine. Then you can use any kind of transparent paint like Tamiya red transparent paint or Alclad or whatever, and paint that outside red and tint the light that way. Or you can use some stuff like sweet wrapper like this and make a lens or some kind of cover on the outside, or you can make a decal, or you know, there's a few ways to go about it. So you can basically tint white light red on the outside. That's a way to go about it. Another way of going around it is cutting out all that inner material, light blocking the inside of it, turning that into a light box basically, and then encasing red LEDs in there, and then you stop any light getting up through the rest of the plastic in both directions, which is fine. That's definitely a way to go about it. Or by far the most complicated way of going about it is turn this into an insert part and light block it separately, treat it like it's separate, like standalone piece, and move forward like that. So guess which one I'm doing. Basically, I don't like tinting white LED light or any kind of white light with paint or any other method to try and change the colour of it. I just think that you get a much better result, in my opinion, this is, using coloured LEDs to get that nice deep red or blue, or you know, whatever light you're trying to sort of create in any area. For me, painting it or using this stuff, it works, it's fine, but to me it's not my preference, it's not to my taste, so I won't be doing it that way. If you've got one of these parts, then please just take my advice as just like with a grain of salt. I mean, if you're happy to paint that, absolutely go for it that way. It's definitely the easiest way of going about it, and it won't look bad. It won't look bad at all. It's just not my preference, so I won't be doing it that way. So what I will be doing, and what I'm in the process of doing, is this. You can see that the engine is missing. It's gone now. There's just an aperture there that needs to be cut out. And the engine itself is now a separate piece that I can treat as like a light blockable insert part, which is exactly what I'll be doing. These are just really rough parts. They need a little bit more refinement. By a little bit, I mean a lot. Before I mould them again and get some actual usable parts out of them. So this is what I'll be doing. I may be offering these for sale. I haven't made my mind up yet, because there's nothing wrong with the version 1. It works really well. It works fine. It's just me being really picky, I think. So there might not even be any need to make this only for my own kind of needs. But I'll see. If there's any demand for it, then it can't hurt to have options, I suppose, for those guys out there that are kind of bloody minded the same way I am. I like to make things difficult for myself, obviously. So that's what I'm going to do. This is going to take quite a while to get to where I need it to and get some translucent parts made. So there's going to be a little bit of work going on in the background with this sort of stuff. And in the meantime, I'll be putting lights into the secondary hole. So let's put this to the side for now. And while I grind the gears in the background, I'll be doing other stuff with the secondary hole. So let's move on to that. Right, things have changed. Obviously, it didn't look like that a few seconds ago, but as I said a minute ago, things are going to start moving at a much quicker pace, and they are, which is good. We'll come back to the electronics part of it in a sec, but for now I'll just talk you through where I am now with this back nacelle pylon wing. I think that's what it's called. I don't really know. That's what I call it. I'll drop in some photos as well that I took during this process, just so you can see what went on. I didn't bother recording it on video because it's just a lot of busy work, and it's, you know, there's not a lot of groundbreaking stuff, and you'll get the idea as I'm talking you through it anyway. So yeah, this back pylon wing. I like to kill 3 birds with 1 stone when I tackle this part, and it's the way I've been doing it for the last several builds of this over the last several years, and it takes care of 3 different issues in one fell swoop. Obviously everyone, well, I say obviously, maybe you don't know, but to get lighting up into these nacelles, you need to get wiring up there, and out of the box the plastic is solid. It's not hollow. So what you have to do if you want to make a nice clean neat job of it is you have to drill or machine out or carve out, however you go about it, some big trenches into that plastic part to embed the wires into, and then you cover them over some way. You've got the photo etch details that Green Strawberry provide in their set that covers it, which I will be adding anyway because it's missing detail that's seen on the 6-footer that's not on the kit part. Well, it is on the kit, stock kit part, but obviously it's not on this now. So that's one bird taken care of, is getting the wiring up there. And if I just slide a little bit of this hard drive ribbon cable down through the cavity there, so you see that's a really effective way of solving that problem. So that's bird 1. Bird 2 is these back marker lights. It's difficult to get those cleanly in. 1, because the thickness of the plastic as it comes out of the box is pretty thin. It's actually undersized slightly. And 2, again, being solid, you have to carve out channels, which I have done, and then embed some fibre optics, or if you wanted to try and get some tiny little pre-wired SMD LEDs in there, you could go about it that way. That's not what I'll be doing. I'll be going with fibre optics. There's a marker light on the bottom edge and the top edge in both positions. top and bottom. So obviously that'll need to be filled back in, and the grid lines will need to be rescribed later down the line, but that's no biggie. Yeah, so the fibre optics will make their way back here somewhere along here, and they'll be terminated at a red and then a green LED to take care of those. So that's the second bird taken care of. And then the third bird, as I just mentioned a few minutes ago, the actual kit part, plastic, is a little bit on the thin side. So it's good to add a little bit of thickness to that as well, just to make it look a little bit more how it should look. So yeah, that's how I've tackled that. Again, you can see it looks like got a bit of cellulite, all those lumps and bumps, and it's very untidy, but there's a lot of body shop work needing to be done later on down the line, and all of that will be taken care of. So that's not a big problem. Just looks a bit of a mess, but it's all good. So yeah, so that's where we are. Right, lighting. This looks really crude and it's a hell of a lash up, so just don't worry about that for now. Obviously I'm not going to leave bare exposed connections there, especially with all this foil tape in there. I'll deal with all this later on down the line. There's plenty more left to do. But believe it or not, those few lengths of LED strip is more than enough to light up all of this internal cavity and even the dorsal section. So I was even surprised myself. I was fully expecting that this wouldn't be enough and I'd have to add either more lengths of LED tape or individual LEDs in sort of strategic points to cover dark areas. But actually, no, it's all working really well. So good. This resin part that I was kind of on the fence about is really earning its keep, and it's convinced me, so it can stay there. It's serving so many purposes at the minute, and it's a really convenient point to wrap all of this tape around. I mean, it's only a 2-inch, 3-inch maybe length of strip tape, but it's throwing light in all directions in this cavity, and it's really making quick work of some pretty difficult situations actually. So yeah, good. I'm really happy with that. This sail up in the middle there, it's clear styrene or acrylic or whatever it is, just some clear sheet stock that I've got. Obviously you don't want a big black sail casting shadows and blocking light. You want light to be free moving in this whole like lampshade arrangement, so that's working really well. Let me just put the top on this and you'll see just how effective it is. So I'll just get that roughly in place and put a band on it so I don't have to juggle with it too much. And I'll throw the switch and you'll see what I'm talking about. Now I'm in a really brightly lit room. It's the middle of the day and it's a nice sunny day at that. And even in these conditions, there's loads of light. You can see all of the windows. Obviously, I haven't scratched any out yet. So, but even now, you can see there's loads of light in there. And I'm really happy with that. But these back ones, they're the litmus test. If these guys are lighting up, then you know you're good. Because don't worry about that flickering. That's just the nature of the lash up. Yeah, these are the litmus test. If you got light back here, then you're good. These are the hardest ones to get light to. So if these guys are lit, you're not struggling in any other area. So that's cool. I'll put this scrap part on the dorsal, just so you can see how well those are lighting up. Again, I was expecting that these might start looking a little bit dim, and I'll maybe having to fire some LEDs back in that direction. But no. No bother, it's all covered. So good, really happy with that. Surprised myself, so that's cool. I mean, you don't want to throw so many LEDs in this thing that it starts to become a heater, because these things will warm up slightly, especially when we start putting stuff in there with resistors. The resistors will start generating a little bit of heat. So yeah, efficiency is the key, and I think it's working really well. So yeah, there's a little bit of blue light spill going on in these windows, but I know how I'm going to tackle that later on down the line. And that will be dealt with. These will be white in the end, don't worry. Well, I say that. maybe I can't solve it, and if I can't, they'll have to be off. Those guys will have to be on duty. Sorry, guys. Maybe you're on overtime. So the last little bits of lighting to take care of, at least for this stage, is the marker lights, really. As I said earlier, there's some fibre optics that are going to need to be put in there. I'm not going to put those fibre optics in yet because I need to contour all this. The shape of all this needs to be tidied up because obviously it's not going to look like that. So that needs to be all smoothed out, rounded off, and then I'll drill and get the fibre optic strands in, and there'll be, like I said earlier, a red and a green LED to take care of those. There's a marker light sitting there. You see the hole drilled for it. I hope you can see that right at the bottom of that strip there. So that'll be a piece of fibre optic terminated into an LED. There's a strobe. Well, it's not a strobe. It doesn't strobe. It flashes. There's a marker flasher that sits right on the keel there, and so that needs to be sorted out, and that, I think, covers it. Alright, we're starting to get there now. I think this is probably going to do it for lighting for this lower section in any case. I took a load of photos, so I'll drop these in while I'm chops in as well, just so you can see the progress as it happened. But basically, the back wing has been smoothed out, and there's the first sort of wave of body shop work has been done to that. The lower rim, or the rear rim, has started to have the contour put into it, enough at least so I can get these fibre optics drilled in. They've been passed through those big chasms there, so they're just sitting in those recesses. Obviously they're going to get filled in soon and smoothed over, and the scribe lines will be rescribed. Got the marker light at the back there, and the keel flasher is there. So let's talk for a quick second about these fibre optic strands. You'll notice that they've been encased in this black heat shrink tube, and it's just like a rubberized material that when it gets hot enough it shrinks over whatever it's wrapped around, and it's usually used to isolate solder joints and stuff like that. But I tend to use it as well for applications where I don't want ambient light to be interfering with specific LED or lighting effects like this, fibre optics and stuff like that. So what's going on inside that lump is you've got two strands of fibre optic that have been drilled and glued into the end of an LED. So what I will do is, and I've got some photos of this, I'll sand off the front of the LED so it's flat, then drill in towards the like the element, if you like, of the LED, and glue any fibre optic strands directly into that hole, using something like this, like a UV cure resin, and you kick it off with a UV light, and it goes off really quick. It's a really good solution for that. Or you can use anything like canopy glue or epoxy. I don't use CA glue because it tends to make this stuff really brittle, and the fibre optic cracks really easy if you do that, so stay away from that stuff. And the reason I wrap it in this heat shrink tube is because I don't want ambient light to be interfering or diluting the colours of the fibre optics. It's kind of like the same thing that happens in the dorsal, or is happening in the dorsal part, with the resin transmitting light and sort of diluting light. So I don't want that to happen. It's not so much of an issue for lights that stay on, like these ones that sit on the back rim and this marker light, because the effect that you'd get if they weren't protected that way is you would just kind of lose the vibrancy of the colour slightly. It would start to sort of bleach out a bit. The real killer happens with flashing lights, because obviously they should be off and then flash on very brightly, and then be off, then flash on very brightly, and then be off again. If I just throw this switch and light everything up, if we get enough shadow in there, you can see that that keel strobe there is dimly lit at the moment, even though the LED is actually off. underneath, see it underneath there, see if I can point at it. That LED is actually off at the moment, but what's happening is the LEDs that are in front of it for the windows are lighting up the side of the fibre optic, and it's making the fibre optic glow, because that's what fibre optic is supposed to do. It's exactly what that's what its job is. So that's not what I want for a flasher. It shouldn't be dimly lit and then flash and then dimly lit and flash. It should be off. So that gets you most of the way encasing it like this. And then obviously again, if there's a bright LED flashing in there that was completely uncovered and just like unshielded, you would see that in the windows as well. The windows would be nice and evenly lit, and then you'd get a burst of light, and then it'd be lit again, and then you get a burst of light, and you don't want that. So you're doing your best at trying to contain all the light effects to only do what you want them to do. So obviously I need to get some more blocking going on in there, and what I'll use is just really thick heavy black paint and get as much paint as I can in there, right down in there, and try and cover up as much as I can. If I can't get at it with paint, then I might even just throw some putty around in there, and that'll do the job just nicely as well. And you can see it on these strands, you see they're green, so you can see just how effective the fibre optic is at transmitting light and picking up light and casting light, etc, etc, which is exactly why we use it the way we use it. The yellow wire that you see there, that's for the flashing circuit that I'll get to way later down the road. There'll just be 3 wires going up into the model in the end. It'll be positive and negative for the 9-volt DC to power everything, and 1 yellow lead that's coming from the flashing circuit, which will be kept in the base. Now, in terms of lighting for this upper part, it's just a couple of things to deal with. There's the spine marker light that needs to go in. That'll be jacketed fibre optics on an LED, same thing. And there's the shoulder marker lights there and there. There isn't one sitting in that centre section for generations anyway. I know there is on the TV series, but like I said earlier, the lighting configuration changed from episode to episode, so I'm trying to get the generations look, so I won't be including that one. And obviously the main priority is going to be dealing with this back part with the impulse engine and getting that solved and tucked away. After that, it'll be a case of fixing that in position, dealing with the seams, etc, and then probably getting these together in one piece. There's a lot of structural work to go on at the back, get it in place along this seam here. That's a load bearing structure, and there's a little technique that I use to try and get as much strength in there as I possibly can, and that's where these little polka dot marks come in, but I'll go over that later on down the line, so just ignore that for now. So once that's dealt with and that's in one piece, it's going to be a case of, do we do the engines next or the saucer section? So I'm not sure, I haven't made my mind up yet. I might take care of the nacelles first, because the saucer is going to be quite a large element of the build. So yeah, I haven't made my mind up, but in the meantime I'll continue with this dorsal, so let's get on with that. Right, this will be the last segment for this episode, so let's get on with it real quick. Getting back to this dorsal, I decided I was just going to cast some sort of first draft versions in translucent resin, just so I can get moving with this build, because I don't really care that these things are really rough on the back. Obviously I'm not going to sell them in that condition, but I don't really care about it. I'm just using them the way they are, so they don't look very tidy from the back, but they work well enough for me. So as you can see on the engine, it's been foil taped around there. There's a light box of sorts back here with 2 LEDs in it. I've dropped some photos in for you now, so you can see how I'll knock those up real quick. Pretty basic stuff, no frills, but all we're after is red light coming out of there. and the dorsal part itself, I've just added some black paint just around that separation firewall, I suppose we can call it, just more of insurance really than anything else. The foil tape and the black paint around this is doing a good enough job, but I didn't want to risk it, so it can't hurt. So obviously all these steps are going to stop any light sort of cross-contaminating between the two parts. So if I just get this in roughly in position like that, and I'll just power her up so you can see, and there we go, nice red light, really nicely diffused, exactly how I wanted it. You can see a little bit of a concentrated spot there in the camera. Trust me, I cannot see that with my naked eye. It is so well evenly lit, it looks beautiful. So I'm really happy with that. So I don't really fully believe what the camera's telling me there, but anyway. So I've got a white LED, and now you can see I can get those bottom windows really good, and it's having no effect on the red light in that impulse engine. So job done, brilliant. Happy with that, so I can move on pretty quickly, get this installed into the dorsal part, get it all tidied up, and get moving on with the next phase of the project, which is going to be putting the secondary hull pieces together, mounting the armature point permanently in place, reinforcing that rear seam that I was talking about just a few seconds ago, and then just taking care of seam work and moving along to the next section of the build, which will probably be the warp nacelles rather than the saucer section. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you come back for the next part. I've already started making it, so it shouldn't be too long behind the back of this one. So yeah, thanks for watching. I hope to see you soon. Take care.